Shrieks of pain filled the house as my mother combed through my curls and tresses. I remember her distinctly telling me, "Caitlyn, beauty is pain." From early on in my childhood, I never quite understood what that phrase meant. Why did I need to experience pain in order to be considered beautiful? I remember my mother walking into my room and telling me I was so untidy for a girl. As a result, I rejected my femininity and made it my mission to behave as ungirly as I possibly could. I rejected all societal expectations of what a girl should behave like. This idea sparked a passion in me that has served as a powerful motivator and aided my growth as an individual. My sense of identity has been shaped by my desire for open-mindedness and fairness. I grew up in a deeply patriarchal society. Eswatini normalizes polygamy, though uncommon nowadays, and gender-based violence is still a significant problem. Women have been viewed as less capable and weaker than men, with many positions of power being held by men. From early on, that ideal was taught to me implicitly, and I knew that regardless of how much power I could have, it would never be as much as my male counterpart. In 2013, I began high school at the United World College of Southern Africa, UWC-SA. The United World College schools are known for their liberal ideals, promoting equality and fairness through education. My previous ideals were challenged daily at this new school. From small matters, such as being able to wear short skirts to school, or whether women should be given leadership roles. Attending UWC-SA changed me in ways I am still discovering today. I met individuals from all over the world. In 2016, I met a girl from Scotland. She and I became good friends, despite our very different beliefs and values. She was outspoken, opinionated, and led many progressive clubs on campus. I was the complete opposite. I was conservative and preferred to avoid conflict at all costs. She shared her views with me and never dismissed mine. She taught me a great deal about what it means to be a liberated woman. I began to notice things that I never considered problematic in the past. We tell girls that they are inherently beautiful, yet we also tell them that in order to be considered beautiful, they need to be subjected to painful, grueling processes. I witnessed this ideology firsthand when my little sister asked me for makeup so that she could make herself beautiful. It pained me to think that my little sister believed that the only way for her to be considered beautiful was to change herself. This made me increasingly aware of the pressure applied to women to look and behave a certain way. I became more open-minded and aimed to empower young girls and remind them that their appearance does not define them. The only limits they will face are the ones they establish themselves. In my junior year of high school, I, along with 2 friends, led the United Nations Girl Up Club at my school. We were given the opportunity to work with girls in rural Swati communities, spreading messages of empowerment and providing the girls with a platform to discuss issues that our generation of Swati girls faces and would not otherwise be able to discuss. I continue to fight this cause with zeal, with the aim of deconstructing the societal norms and pressure imposed on women. I strongly believe that the African girl should be empowered because she will one day be the backbone of the African continent. Teach her that the idea of gender roles is absurd. Do not ever tell her that she cannot do something because she is a girl. Because you are a girl is not a good enough reason for anything. The 7-year-old that once rejected her femininity because it made her weak has been replaced by a girl who is fearlessly female and empowers girls around her to be the same. The United World College experience changed me and made me more open-minded and made me fight for fairness amongst the genders. As Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie once said, "I have chosen to no longer be apologetic for my femaleness and my femininity, and I want to be respected in all my femaleness because I deserve to be."
How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean by Providence impoverished squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar? The $10 founding father without a father got a lot farther by working a lot harder, by being a lot smarter, by being a self-starter. By 14, they placed him in charge of a trading charter. And every day while slaves were being slaughtered and carted away across the waves, he struggled and kept his guard up. Inside, he was longing for something to be a part of. The brother was ready to beg, steal, borrow, or barter. Then a hurricane came and devastation reigned. Our man saw his future dripping down the drain, put a pencil to his temple, connected it to his brain. Then he wrote his first refrain, a testament to his pain. Well, the word got around, they said, "This kid is insane, man." Took up a collection just to send him to the mainland. Get your education, don't forget from whence you came, and the world's gonna know your name. What's your name, man? Like Alexander Hamilton, I believe there is a compelling story in all of us with life-changing lessons hidden within. Telling our stories is something based out of oral traditions and provide understanding of history and teach us important lessons about ourselves and how we relate to the world. Our life stories are uniquely important, inhabiting every genre, and are so complex that there are many times we are both the hero and the villain, depending on the moment. I'd like to share a few chapters of my story with you of how I became aware of my identity and later social justice. Chapter 1, I am my mother and my father. I was born in Southern California to a Black working class father from Oklahoma and an immigrant Korean mother from rural South Korea. And I spent a brief time in my infancy moving from California to Korea, Colorado, Sand Springs, and finally Tulsa, where I primarily grew up. My dad retired from the Air Force as a master sergeant, where he learned to service airplanes and continued to do that with American Airlines at one of their hubs in Tulsa. While we moved a lot, I didn't have many memories of anywhere before Oklahoma, which is why when you ask me where home is, without hesitation, I say Oklahoma. This first chapter of my life found me also learning about the concept of race for the first time. It was a social construct created through various subtle affirming social cues, like an amalgam of American and Korean food, or hearing different languages spoken around me, or simply noticing how others treated me based on my looks. And there were matching harsh social cues, like being called the N-word and ridiculed on the school bus by the time I was in first grade. Chapter 2, heartache and pain. I learned a lot about navigating a world with cultural differences through relationships with people. And in retrospect, some of those lessons were pretty painful. One of the most memorable moments was when we made the move to Tulsa. My mom and dad were proud to have been able to build a new house for us there. I recalled the excitement of moving to a big city, relative to Sand Springs. But soon after, I remembered a moment when my parents were in the kitchen speaking in whispered conversations and looking concerned. I'd come to learn that the new suburban, predominantly white neighborhood was much different than the predominantly Black rural area in Sand Springs. And when we made this move, there were complaints made to the housing association by neighbors who had concerns that a non-white family moving in would devalue the neighborhood and subsequently the value of their homes. For me, this had an even deeper effect, because as a child, I typically believed that adults were generally correct. And if that assumption were true, that we would bring the neighborhood's value down, then in turn, that must mean I was also less valuable than my white neighbors. My own sense of self-value, or lack thereof, seeped deep into my consciousness, and even affected my relationship with others throughout my younger life, including friendships or even who I was supposed to date romantically in high school and through college. Chapter 3, Insecurity, Selfishness, and Survival. In 1992, I was about 12 years old, hearing news coverage of the LA riots following an acquittal of LAPD officers who had been videotaped brutally beating Rodney King the previous year. I saw images of a community outraged by a visible use of violent force on a black body, and I also saw terrible images of indignation turning into community violence against neighbors, including Korean business owners in LA. I was in middle school and felt a frustration of not fitting in, not only with the predominantly white neighborhood we lived in, but also with others within my own ethnic community. To some folks, I wasn't black enough, nor was I Korean enough either. In my mind, I was living and breathing in this LA riot, trying to make sense of all of the complications around me. When I felt this chaos, I turned toward a direction that many might do. I tried to selfishly hide from potential harm or ignorance, often shrinking myself and shunning away from helping as much as I could. When incidents of ignorance impacted others for fear of someone turning on me, as it happened before on those bus rides in first grade. This obsession with my own survival further turned from cowardice to violence as soon as I was old enough and strong enough to defend myself. And the first person I targeted was a kid named Justin. Now, by all accounts, Justin was one of my best friends that I played with all the time in my Tulsa neighborhood. But for some reason, that changed in an instant. Justin had learned a new way to ridicule black people and decided to test it on me by calling me the N-word. However, this time, I wasn't a little 7-year-old boy anymore. I was enraged, and I wasn't going to be bullied again. He saw my anger and took off running, and I followed in stride, catching him at his door. Before he could key in, I grabbed him by the throat and pinned him against the door until he was turning red, as the wrath inside me likely resembled. He was crying and gasping as I had my fingers curled around his neck, lifting him in the air above the cement step, and I don't remember caring one bit. But then his mom opened the door. I immediately let Justin go, and he dropped to the floor, and the next moment I felt an overwhelming sense of shame, not just because of seemingly getting caught, but from the look in the eyes of his mom, who appeared to have seen a vicious monster at her doorstep. I backed away slowly, knowing that I was that monster, and then I turned and ran home. Any pride I felt in myself when I caught Justin left likely that same day, before I knew that I did not want to ever become that same monster again, capable of losing all semblance of control. Chapter 4, Reconciliation. I didn't have a run-in with Justin again. However, over time, I knew I needed to learn from what happened. By the time I finished high school, I knew diversity existed. It was beaten into my head like a drum that differences existed in people, and in retrospect, I realized diversity was less like a melting pot and more like a cafeteria tray. It established sections and barriers. By the time I started college, I recognized where I held tremendous privilege despite painful experiences in my life. I couldn't deny that I wielded an immense amount of unearned advantages, being male, non-disabled, Christian, and heterosexual. Being male meant I had access to more professional development opportunities than my girlfriend did, even though we worked at the same company during 2 years of internships. Being non-disabled meant that I could actually get to speak with the university president in Evans Hall without an access issue or feeling of embarrassment. Being Christian was one of the largest major religions in this country meant I didn't get the same questions and negative attention my Muslim, Hindu, or atheist friends did. And being straight meant that I would be allowed to marry the person I loved without judgment and not be one of the most targeted groups for hatred and bullying. Once I recognized the notion of privilege, I stopped focusing on myself as a victim and began to think of ways to reflect on helping others as an ally and accomplice. I learned to take responsibility for mistakes and grow as a person to this day, and I sought inspiration from other stories in hopes of helping me better understand my own, because knowing your story and sharing your story can empower and possibly touch people in many ways you never know. For example, a story could even inspire a civil rights movement for a devout Christian man in America because of a Hindu man in India, like it did for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who learned of Mahatma Gandhi's through his stories and writings while enrolled as a seminary student nearly a year after Gandhi had been assassinated. Common experiences and values like fear, rejection, anger, joy, love, failure, triumph, not only define you, but they connect you with others and help others learn about themselves in the process. People like Dr. King and Gandhi shared stories because they understood the power of sharing such stories, even at the risk of harm or death. After knowing their stories and what others have sacrificed for me to hear them, I think the least we can do is be powerful and influential characters in the stories of our own lives. Because as they say in Hamilton, I may not live to see our glory, but I would gladly join the fight. And when our children tell our story, they'll tell the story of tonight. Thank you.
At 12:47 in the afternoon, 3 years ago, I learned the most important lesson of my life. It was nothing enlightening, nothing that could be considered life-changing, but I've never stopped thinking about it. My English teacher, who rarely ever taught us, was in the middle of another one of his life stories when he stopped. He paused and looked at the class, seemingly deciding something. Clearing his throat, he looked at us and said, "Don't be afraid to tell your friends that you love them. Don't be afraid of the words, 'I love you.'" He reminded us that in the society we live in, it can often be taboo to show and tell your friends that you love them, even if it is true. He begged us to remind people every day, even if it is embarrassing or strange, that you love them. He made us say it to our classmates around us. Some of us had never heard it in our life. That one moment branded itself in my mind more than any science lesson I ever learned in school. I could not remember the last time I had told my friends that I cared for them, and all I could think was that they deserved to know. And I know people say all the time that love is the answer, and you may roll your eyes, but they are right. Does really anything in this world matter but love? If I die tomorrow, I would be proud to do so, because there are people who love me and who I love back. That's a greater accomplishment than anything I will ever achieve in my life. And I'm not talking about romantic love. Romance is alive and well in our society. However, platonic love is suffering. Do your friends know that you love them? You might say yes, but do they really know? Are you showing your love for them in a way that they would understand? People recognize and show love in very specific ways. It is vital to love your friends in a way that they understand. Otherwise, you are leaving them in the dust, thinking that they are alone without anyone who cares for them. Somewhere hidden in Scotland is a dear friend of mine. While he still lived near me and we went to school together, we were very close. I like to be close to my friends physically because my love language is physical touch. When one of us needed support, we would always just silently reach for the other's hands in solidarity. It was a way of comforting and telling each other that we love each other without saying a word. It was and still is incredibly important to our friendship, even 4,487 miles away from each other, and I suppose that it always will be. A lot of this importance that I place on love lends a hand to compassion towards others. If you cannot show your love to your friends, how are you going to show compassion when they are hurting? Your actions must come from love for them to be true. If you cannot admit to loving your friends because you are too embarrassed to do so, how do you expect to show them any resemblance of compassion? To share the sorrow of your friend, they have to be willing to share that sorrow with you. They will not be willing to be vulnerable with you if they feel like they cannot trust you and that you don't love them. Beyond this, showing compassion to your friends is just as important as showing love for them. At the core, compassion stems from love. Moving to Texas was probably one of the hardest moments of my life. I cannot say it was the worst moment because there are many other times that take that spot, but it was so very hard. I had a sinking feeling, rather an understanding that my friends in California would probably not speak to me again. And it came true. Most of my friends, save a good few, cut me off. It hurt, badly, and for a long, long time, I felt like I had no new friends at my home. And the friends I did have, I felt did not love me. The main reason I felt this way is because none of my new friends were saying I love you to me in a way that I understood. As I previously mentioned, my love language is physical touch, and so I like to hug my friends, hold their hands, lean on them. However, they did not enjoy this kind of contact, and because of this, I convinced myself that they did not love me, that they did not care. I was depressed, and I never felt so lost and small in my life. I think this is when I really understood how vital it is to show love to other people, because if not, they would feel like I did. Eventually, it did get better. I talked to my friends about how I was feeling, but I can never really forget how I felt those cold winter days, convinced that there was something wrong with me. Now, I give out my love freely in hopes that no one ever has to feel that way. Platonic love is perhaps the most important love you can ever experience. You can live your whole life without romantic love, without parental love, but you cannot survive without platonic love. Next time you fear showing your friends that you love them because you're embarrassed or assume they already know, ignore that. A world without love is not a world worth living in. Say the words with me. I love you. Say them again. Say them in your mirror. Say them to your friends. Fit the words in your mouth and learn how to send them back off into the world. I love you, and that is all.
Although I was born and raised in the south side of Oklahoma City, my parents, along with the rest of my family, hail from the beautiful mountains of Chihuahua, Mexico. If I pause and take a moment and reminisce, I can still hear that Spanish music that would be blasting way too early on Saturday mornings to wake me up. I can still recall the coughing fits that I would get as my mom would be cooking those serrano peppers and it filled the entire house with smoke. I can still smell the scent of her scrumptious tamales that she would make every year around December for the holidays. However great these feelings might be, for years, none of these things could overcome the sense of fear and anger and hopelessness that I felt when my life was nearly changed forever. When I was 8 years old, we were traveling back from Texas from what had been at the time a really dope, nostalgic family reunion. I remember sitting in my aunt's truck and popping my little head up and just seeing these flashing red and blue lights turn on and detain my uncle's truck. The next thing I know, I was sitting all alone and confused as I was stripped away from my little cousin, as her tear-stained face stared back at me, screaming, "Por favor, no dejes que me lleven." Please don't let them take me. As her and the rest of her family was crammed into the back of the Border Patrol truck. It's been more than 12 years since that day, and I haven't seen her or any of her family members since. For years after that moment, I lived paralyzed with the constant fear that at any moment my parents could suffer the same fate. Since my parents were undocumented, it was hard for them to get jobs of any kind. So money was often tight around the house, and off-brand cereal quickly became a Saturday morning staple. Growing up, I attended a predominantly African American and Latinx high school, where 90% of the students were on free and reduced lunch. Going through classes, our counselors would often speak to us as if we somehow made it to get accepted to a community college. Then we would have lucked out and far exceeded any expectations that anybody had for our life. Well, luckily, I was able to escape this, and during my junior year of high school, I had the opportunity to attend a program at the University of Chicago that managed to awaken something deep within my soul. While I was there, I met CEOs and lawyers and doctors, dancers, investment bankers, activists, who all looked like me and all shared similar stories as I did. And not only did they believe that I could achieve greatness, but they made me crazy enough to believe it too. While I was there, they gave me a key to unlock a door that had been closed for me and my family for generations. And although you might not be able to tell now, because freshman 15 for sure hits real heavy, but I ran cross country my whole life. So as soon as I got that key, I took it and I ran and I never looked back. These experiences are part of the reason that influenced me to create Miracle Mindset and help me understand that your experiences and your identities that you carry with you have shaped a unique perspective within you. That you can change the world. With these identities and with these lived experiences, there are problems that only you can solve. There's value that only you can add, and there are services that only you can provide. All of us here today have the power to build bridges. The question is, what are you going to do when that fear and that anger and that hopelessness is seemingly engulfing your life? Are you going to stop and crumble at the weight of it all? Or are you going to use that to unlock more closed doors? As a society, we need you to do the latter. Make something out of those feelings. You can let them remain as just feelings, or maybe you can shape them and use them to create something beautiful. Thank you.
We have all heard someone say, clean your plate at some point in our lives. However, the saying, eating every last crumb, can mean a whole lot more than just food. When I was younger, I've always remembered going over to my great-grandmother's house for the holidays. We would play games and eat an outrageous amount of food. Fortunately, I heard one saying that helped shape my mindset on relationships and encounters we all face throughout life. That saying was, to eat every last crumb. I once thought this was just a saying people would use to help convince others to eat all the food they had. But instead, I came across a new meaning, one that coordinates with the word commitment. In life, we meet so many people that will help influence and shape who you are as a person. As time goes on and you grow older, the windows of opportunities for you to spend time with your family, friends, or whoever your people are becomes thinner, and the precious memories that could have been will fade. You must stand firm in your life and keep the commitment to your people alive while they are. Eating every crumb not only applies to food, but also to the moments and memories you make along the way. Growing up, I've always remembered my grandfather saying how important family is and how we should do anything for them. He would stress to my brothers and I how strong a family can be when we all stick together. Family not only provides a backbone for you to rest on, but an atmosphere in which to be yourself. My grandpa always loved spending time with his grandkids, even when we were too young to see the importance of making memories. As we got older and our lives started pulling us in all different directions, having those moments where we were all together and hanging out became less frequent. Staying committed to each other became much like a chore rather than a gift. Just recently, my grandfather passed away, and although I do not know the reason why he went, all I know is that I have a lot of memories that forever make me smile. Unfortunately, there was plenty of opportunities for me to eat every last crumb, and I did not. I may have some regrets of what could have been with my grandfather, but I ate enough to learn a few things. My grandfather was committed to his loved ones and never passed up an opportunity to eat every last crumb life threw his way. His dedication to his family was tremendous. My grandfather always strived to eat every crumb he could, and because of this, he made a huge impact on a lot of people's lives. This is why I believe that everyone should stay committed to the people in their lives and eat at every opportunity that comes their way. This will not only build your memories, it will also help shape who you are and how you react with opportunities in your life. Staying committed to the people in your life is a key skill everyone should develop in their life before they lose too much precious memories. Life will throw you some curveballs to cloud your focus and alter you from what is important. With this confrontation, do not get stuck in the eye of the storm, but rather focus yourself on the clearing of the storm. Take the time and spend time with your people and make those precious memories that will last a lifetime. Stay committed to them before they're all gone. So when you're out looking to make memories, think of life as a big Thanksgiving meal. At first, you go get a little bit of everything, and then you go back for the good stuff. This is the same way in our daily lives. When a situation is sprung on you to spend time with your people, take the moment and say, why not? You're only guaranteed so much time in life, so why not stay and eat every crumb that comes your way? Be committed and going back for a plate of seconds. Eat every moment you can in your life and grow your commitment with one another. Keep the commitment to your people close to your heart and try not to wander away from it. With this, always remember to clean your plate and treasure all the precious memories that accompanies it.
In many stories I've been told by my grandparents, women play a very important role. Women guide people into the living realm as midwives and help tired souls into the spirit realm. I've been told since the time I could babble that I am sacred, important, and powerful, that I could lead and contribute to my community. Once I got older, that endless confidence from my childhood that I had felt began to fizzle, because the world we live in is not always so nice to girls like me. I started to doubt myself and my worth. Every important person I saw, the presidents, CEOs, my principals, they were all men. If women were so important, why didn't I see it reflected in the society in front of me? I became insecure and shy, and I gave up on being important. The greatest single thing that would help me overcome this insecurity is to stop placing my self-worth in others and society, to learn to persevere despite what I saw around myself. A lesson that finally clicked one particular day. I was at the Cherokee Spring Powwow at Northeastern State University Stadium, located in the Cherokee capital of Tulsa, Oklahoma. 14 at the time, I was completely dazzled by the gorgeous yellow and red ribbon flying off of dancing men and women. Their beadwork sparkled in the stadium lighting as they floated before the judges, dancing for health and peace. At the end of the jingle dress dance, a dance led by women to heal and cleanse, I felt like a different person. The way they danced felt like pure magic. They commanded the attention of the stadium, and I knew I wanted to be that confident. The power of movement has continued to be a large force in my life as a way of helping me connect to myself and my sense of self-worth. The powwow felt like another realm, like it didn't matter what was going on in the world outside the stadium. Those women dancing were powerful. They were important. They were sacred. It felt like each was only dancing to please themselves and whatever higher power they were appealing to. For one of the first times, I felt like I could be powerful too. It made me want to try hard, push through whatever I had to in order to succeed and persevere. Soon after, I begged my mother to enroll me in dance classes. I loved it fiercely, and I have danced until this August, 5 days out of the week for 6 years. I found that it doesn't matter if I'm dancing alone in my bedroom, or on stage in front of family and friends, or even if it's traditional shawl dancing versus jazz. I feel most connected to myself and the power my family has instilled in me when I'm dancing. When I dance to express myself and to please firstly me. The worth of my movement is not placed on how society views it, and the ability to work hard but for my own satisfaction and self-pleasure has been a guiding force in my life ever since my first dance lesson. Those women at the powwow made me feel seen and represented. They made me want to persevere and work hard. The importance for a child to be able to see themselves in an important and positive figure is massive, and something that I hope I can be for another girl one day. As our society progresses, I hope that girls will never doubt their sacredness and importance. That they look up not only to see dancers that look like them, but CEOs and presidents. That's the future I'm working toward, and that's why I'll never let myself doubt who I am again. The confidence dance has taught me has become the fuel for my fire of my life, and now more than ever, I want to make a difference in the world, to shape it better for my future daughters and their daughters, so that they can see the ability for themselves to succeed at anything. and know that they can, that they are good enough, and that they belong.
Would you believe me if I told you that I was immortal? Yes, I have technically only been alive for 18 years. However, I've been living for thousands of years more than that. Now, before you begin to question my sanity, allow me to explain this belief of mine. A part of my immortality started on a tropical island in 1950, when a terrified yet hopeful young man boarded a boat headed to a place that he had never been before. This 17-year-old pioneer had skin that resembled the tint of an ebony-stained pillar of mahogany cut straight from the tree. Crowned by a jet-black layer of thick hair was a face with features so strong that one could compare it to a freshly chiseled sculpture from the Renaissance era. Below that young traveler's penetrating, hazel-colored gaze were two full nostrils that were all but prepared to inhale the aquatic odors that awaited him on his journey across those uncharted bodies of water that lay before him. Yet in the midst of that uncertainty was a content-filled smirk that had been his defining feature since early childhood. Accompanying the unrivaled confidence displayed on his face was a voice so tender that it could only be compared to the likes of a sweet, smooth, soothing lullaby sung to a child on a stormy night. Like a lullaby, his voice was gentle enough to soothe a troubled child's soul, yet just strong enough to hear over the pitter-patter of raindrops on the window with every word that he spoke. However, when needed, that sweet song of a voice could turn into a booming sound intense enough to shake the foundations of a mountain. Standing at only 5'7", Vincent Hewitt held an unwavering confidence as he stepped onto that vessel that would take him 2,500 kilometers away from his hometown of Kingston, Jamaica, to the concrete jungle of New York. With nothing but the clothes on his back and the abiding pride in his name, my grandfather would become one of the Bronx's most well-known landscapers. And alongside my grandmother, Sylvia Ann Smith, raised his 4 children, one of which is one half of the pillars of my family today, my father, Rickey Sr. On the other side of the nation was a different chapter in the story of my immortality that relied on the same level of courage as the last. Born and raised in the great city of New Orleans was a youthful soul that embodied the term strong woman. This angel's halo was comprised of a massive afro that would even leave Angela Davis at a loss for words. That halo sat above a slim, dark, blemishless-faced woman that portrayed the elegance of Queen Nzinga, yet simultaneously exuded the ferocity of Shaka, the Zulu chief himself. Her eyes were as deep and as dark as the night sky, and her smile left men wide-eyed and speechless for hours after she had long walked by. Her voice was smooth and soft, with just a little bit of sass accompanied by that New Orleans dialect. Even now, when I hear her tell stories of her past, I can't help but to close my eyes and imagine that she's holding my hand, walking me down the river walk. However, those are the points in the conversations when she would snap me back to reality, because in her day, there for damn sure weren't any pleasant strolls in that now popular downtown area of New Orleans. Despite her strong character and beautiful features, Verta Franklin had unknowingly committed the sin of being born in the Jim Crow-infested South. From spiteful words that will make today's microaggressions sound like songs off of a Kids Bop album, to the haunting images of burning crosses and the constant fear of being a part of the next harvest of strange fruit, my grandmother grew up in a world that sole purpose was to despise her. However, that did not stop her from being the fantastic mother that she was. After divorcing my grandfather, she made the decision to raise all of their children by herself. She even adopted another son whose mother that was a friend of hers had died not too long after the divorce. As a worker in the Owens & Illinois glass bottling manufacturing plant, my grandmother always worked enough to make sure that all of her children were taken care of, no matter what. One of those children would just so happen to become the other pillar of my family today, my mother and Trail. Those two people had no idea that their decisions would eventually lead to the young man whose words you are listening to today. But I do believe that, like me, they understood their immortality. I recently saw the movie Queen and Slim, and there was a line in the movie that encapsulates this belief of mine. In a scene where Queen was trying to fall asleep at a rough point in her and Slim's dangerous journey, she asked Slim to tell her a story, and he told her this.
When I was a kid, I asked my mom where babies come from, and she said I was too young to know. Then I asked my grandma, and she told me something different. She said babies come from God. They're his way of making sure that nobody dies. They are us, reborn. I believe that I am my predecessors reborn. The air that I breathe is through them. The words that I speak are through them, and the lives that I hope to change will all be through them. That is because their decisions are what made my reality possible, and those are the decisions that run through my veins. My knowledge of their stories is what shapes my strong value of self-regulation. Whenever I am tempted to walk away from challenges, I remember what they did to make sure that I would get here. I am but the newest chapter in their centuries-long story of my family line. Therefore, it is my responsibility to contribute to that immortal story at all costs, so that the generations that come after me will live through the remembrance of my dedication just as I lived through those before me. So now, would you believe me if I told you that I was immortal? Thank you.
It's so difficult to be the last person, and the only thing I like about it, I may not have much to say because everybody has said something. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm also happy to be the last. When I saw this podium, I got intimidated, and I almost forgot what I believe in. The reason why I forgot this because I totally believe in being who I am. I believe I am short, but my shortness is not that I am short upstairs. I am myself. I know my background, and I want all of us to try to think for a moment when we try to hide behind our own identity, when we try to wear a mask. I want us to ask ourselves, when did we ever try to put someone else's shoes? Do you know the right size of your shoes? You think you know, you might not know. Recently, I was invited by a friend. We went for lunch, and I discovered one thing after I was invited to this talk. I realized I have never told anybody that whenever I sit on those chairs, my feet cannot touch the ground. So I told my friend, I said, you know, I'm sitting here, my legs are all hanging, I can't reach the ground. Let me sit on a chair where I can reach down. That was for me a recognition of who I am. If I know who I am, I will accept exactly what I am going to do for others. Nelson Mandela once said, our deepest fear is that we are too powerful. And we don't know how powerful we are. And it scares us. You are beautiful, you are gorgeous. Why not? I know for a lot of us, if someone says you are beautiful, they feel they are being flattered. They feel they are crying. They can cry. And if someone says you are black, that is the biggest crime I've realized in the United States. I am black. I tell you one story. One time Al Jazeera was trying to film me and they were not getting things right. They told someone, a friend of mine said, just shine a light in her face. We can't see. The room she is in is very dark. I said, no, it is not the room, it is me. I am dark myself. Even if you shine a light in my face, I'll remain dark. I accept myself as I am. And when you accept yourself as you are not going to cause pain to other people. You are not going to hurt them. You are not going to make them uncomfortable. Be authentic. Be yourself. It is being yourself that will make you reach out to other people. Find out, why are you here? Why are you in OU? OU is too small. It's just a patch of ground you're standing on. Ask yourself, why am I in the world? We are made for more. I am made for more. What is my contribution in the world? How am I going to change the world? I can change the world if I can accept who I am. I can make someone accept herself or himself if I accept myself. Let us learn to be open, to wear no mask. Let us appear in front of people as we are created by God, and we are created for more, and we can change the world. But that change, that transformation must start from yourself. You must be on that seat of the transformation. Then you can change the world at any time with your lives. I always want every one of us to remember, if you put somebody's shoes, you're going to walk for a short distance. If you put your own shoes, you will go a long way. Sometimes when I hear people introducing Sister Rosemary, I just don't even know how they get them all. I don't care about them, but I remember one thing. I grew up in a brush-thatched house. I came from parents who I used to say are not educated. Actually, now I've changed my statement. They were educated. They had indigenous knowledge, which no one has. You look at me and say, Sister Rosemary, your identity, you have an accent. Yes, I have an accent. You don't have an accent. You say, Sister Rosemary, you speak like, but you can't speak my language. I am myself, and I will always be myself. I will live once, you will live once, and that's where we are. We all have a destiny. We all know where we are going if we can accept our own identity. You can become great if you believe in yourself and you can help others become great. How do great women and men look like? They stand up to hardships and they sacrifice their lives for others in order to bring a change in the world and make it a better place to live in. Again, Nelson Mandela, one of these greatest kind of people we ever knew in our history. He believed in himself. He was a visionary, and he was more creative, full of imagination of how the world should be like. Believing in oneself brings courage to share constructive ideas with other people. In order to truly believe in oneself, you must be ready to suffer. Get ready to be humiliated. And at times, we must get ready to give an answer to questions we shall be asked about the choices we make in life. I want to end this talk again with a quote of Nelson Mandela. He says, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made for the lives of others that will determine the significance of life we live." And before I stop, I want you to have some questions. I'm not a professor, for your information, and I'm not giving you an assignment. You're not going to be graded, but grade yourselves. What are your top 3 values or virtues that can make people know who you are? When you know your identity, you remain true to yourself and the public as well in all sorts of situations. In order to be yourself, you need to constantly do an honest background check of yourself. You need to examine yourself and go into deep reflection. I do not want to decide myself and justify anything that made me put on a mask. I don't want to deceive myself with that. In order to be who I am at all times, I must recognize who I am and remain grounded there. Don't forget to ask this question: who am I at my core? When and where do I feel the call to make a difference in the world? What do I want to be part of in the world? Thank you so much.